Welcome to Silhouette Essentials 101. This is week 2, and I'm Nicole Nowosad, your educator for this 4-week-long Page Maps U event. Today we are going to build off week 1 and do a little bit more with basic shapes, including tracing PNG files, creating a pattern from basic shapes, duplicating and replicating, rotating basic shapes, editing points to a pre-made shape, and doing a little bit of drawing with the pencil tool. So let's go ahead, open up your Silhouette software, and get started. Quite simply, we're going to search the internet and look for a PNG shape that we like. And in this case, we're going to use the word fun that's in our cut file for this week as the shape that we're going to trace. One thing about working with PNG files that I just want to remind everyone is that you have to be aware of copyright infringement policies on these images. So please make sure that you're choosing something that is free to use and that you're never infringing on that copyright of that image. So the PNG opens quite nicely into your Silhouette software, and you can see here down at the bottom I have the word fun that we're going to be tracing. And I'm just going to enlarge it just for the purpose of this exercise. You could do it small, it doesn't need to be sized to the size you want, but I'm just going to zoom in so that it's easier for you to see. So if you go to your trace menu, which is again the blue area with the yellow outline, and select trace area, and you just want to click and drag over the image that you want to trace. So you don't even have to be very careful about if you have other little bits in your design that you don't want. I'll show you how to clean that up later. And if you just click that area, if you click and drag and keep everything you want traced within that gray bounding box that appears, that's what you want to do. And again, the yellow will show up and show you where the cut line is. So you want to adjust your high pass filter so that all that gray and blackened out area is gone. And then just select trace. And you'll see that both the inside and the outside of the design is completely traced for you to prepare to use. Now there are two other things I do want to point out in the same trace menu just to show you what happens if you select different options. So again, I'm just going to trace the word fun. But this time, after I adjust my high pass filter, I'm not going to choose trace. I'm going to actually select trace outer edge, and just to show you the difference between the two settings. So I'll just drag, I dragged the wrong thing. I'll just move this off to the side, and then you can see here that I only trace the outer edge of that word fun. So it's a little bit of a different look, and I guess depending on what you're tracing, you may want to do that. So that is the difference between those two options. Now, one last thing is that I want to show you what happens when you do not adjust that high pass filter. So I'll trace the word fun one last time, and this time I'm going to leave the high pass filter as it is. I believe that's at 5, and I'm just going to hit trace again like we did in the first example, and you can see that what's remaining are all the tiny little bits within the word fun. If you were to leave that as it is, your silhouette would try to cut on all those red lines, so it probably wouldn't cut very well and you'd have a bit of a mess. So just make sure you're choosing the right option for the design that you're tracing so that you get the right look that you want from your cut file. Now I'm just going to delete these extras and leave myself with the one word that I want to use, and I'm going to show you quickly how you can get rid of those two bits. If you right click and choose Release Compound Path, you'll see that you have those two little extra bits there on the left hand side. If you click and drag over them and you can right click and hit delete, they're gone forever. If you just click and drag over the rest of the word fun and make it a compound path again through right clicking, you can see that it's now one complete design again. And again, just like we learned in week 1, you can resize this image either in the scale window or by clicking and dragging on these outer 4 corner edges of the design. So you can make it as large or as small as you want. Okay, so that's tracing a PNG file. Super fun and a lot of options with that one. The next thing I want to show you is how to create this circle background that's in this week's cut file. So it's very simple. By choosing the elliptical tool on the left-hand side of the Silhouette software, you can see that we're going to create a simple circle, and I'm going to resize it to 1.5 inches. And I'm going to do that in my scaling window and just type in 1.5 inches, and I'll leave the lock aspect on so it remains the same size. And just like we did in week 1, I'm going to apply an offset to this internally, and I'm going to choose 1/4 inch as my offset amount between the two circles. And you'll see that now I'm going to have two circles, one slightly smaller than the other, and I want to make that into one ring shape. So by clicking and dragging over both and making it into a compound path, I now have one ring, one circle ring. The next thing we want to do is just duplicate that ring into a second shape, and I'm just going to zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. So in the replicate window, which looks like that flower shape up at the top, you can choose duplicate right. Now what that will do is make an exact copy of that initial ring shape right directly beside. One thing I want to show you though is in the cut settings window. This is the difference between the cut edge and the cut version in the cut settings. Right now, if you take a look, wherever there's a red line right now is where it's going to cut. So between those two circles there, you're going to have a line cut in between them. If you don't want to have them cut along the edge, you need to make sure the two are welded together so that they're one shape. So I'm just going to select both and then right click and select weld. And first I'm actually going to arrow over 3 times on my keypad just to make sure that there is a slight overlap. And then I'm going to weld those two rings together to make them into one shape. So again, arrow over 3 times to the left and then grab them both and then weld together. And you can see now it's going to only cut around that outside edge of the design, which is what I want. At this point, because you have your basic design down, you just want to duplicate that again and repeat the process. So I'm going to duplicate it to the right, arrow over to the left 3 times so that it overlaps my first design, select both shapes, and right click and hit weld again. And now I have a row of 4. So one more time should do it for me. So I'm going to duplicate it one more time. I'm going to arrow over 3 times on my arrow key on my keyboard. I'm going to shift and click on both designs so they're selected, and then I'm going to right click and select weld. And now you can see I have a row of 8 linked circles. So that's what I'm going to use to build my background on. Every background that you make is basically built up of an assortment of different shapes. And in this case, this one is simply just a bunch of circles linked together. So from this row here, what we're going to do is just duplicate it again to create the background. So instead of duplicating right, this time we're going to click on it and select duplicate below. Now because last time I arrowed over to the left 3 times, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to arrow up 3 times, and then you can weld those two together. If you wanted to just leave it like that, and then you could repeat the process again. However, what I like to do is make it a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to select, instead of welding, I'm just going to select the bottom row here. And I'm going to go down into the replicate window one last time. And if you scroll down, there's so many different options of what you can do. I'm going to choose the column of 3. And what that will do is take your design that you have selected and create a column of 3 of those exact images. And if you hit shift and click on the bottom 2 rows and then arrow up 3 times, they will both move at the same time. Now you have 4 rows of those linked circles all ready to go to be welded together to create a background. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. I'm going to select all 4 of those rows just by clicking and dragging over all of them. And again, you could go to the modify window to weld, but I'm just going to hit right click and hit weld. And you can see now I have one circle background shape. Okay, I'll fill it in just so it's kind of a little bit easier to see. It's hard on the white page background there. So I'll just fill it in black and you can see. And then I'm going to take it one step further to show you how we did what we did with the cut file in your stuff for week 2. So there is the ring of circles. And I like this as a basic background. It's a really fun one you could do a lot with. So from here, I'm just going to select the design and actually release the compound path. And again, what that does is it releases all those individual shapes built into that design. And I'm actually going to go in and delete out some of those inside circles so that we're left with some of these darker circles that will remain, like in our cut file. So I'm going to click on it, and you can either right click and hit delete, or you can just use the delete key on your keypad on your computer on whichever designs you want. So I'm going to do the circles, but you could definitely do this with the diamonds as well. So I'm just going to click on a few of the options here and delete one at a time. And then when I'm done this, I'm just going to select the entire image one last time, and then I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to select Make Compound Path. And again, that's going to just take all those tiny little images, join them together into one design. So here we go. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to hit Make Compound Path. And I'm going to fill that in again just so you can see the difference again. And this will make it look like the background there that we have in our cut file with these circles missing. So a really, really easy way for you to customize even just something as simple as a bunch of circles to look completely unique. Right, so let's go ahead and get started on trying to make that seal shape here that's in our cut file. So as we learned in week 1, drawing with the polygon tool, I'm just going to draw a pentagon here. I'm just going to turn off my grid because I don't need that. And oops, I deleted that. So I'm just going to draw that pentagon again. And then it's just a simple matter of replicating. So again, you can draw the same thing would work for any sort of shape that you choose with the drawing tool. And you can adjust it again with that zipper like I showed you last week. And for this purpose, I think I'm going to go ahead and choose a octagon shape. You could certainly go all the way up, but of course the more sides you have, the less it's going to look like a seal. So I'm going to choose this octagon shape, and it's very, very simple to do this. You simply want to choose the rotate 5 copies, and what that does is it takes that one shape and it rotates it on its center access point, and as you can see here, creates multiple shapes of that. If you left it as it is, you can see here I'm in the cut settings window, all those little red pieces would cut out and on your own, but you can easily just adjust one of the zippers here in this shape to make it even more unique by making more points or less. But I'm just going to right click on it and weld it together, and you can see we already have our seal shape. So it's very, very simple to create something like this with just a basic shape and rotating it on itself. And adjusting those zippers when it's all together there is another way that you can make it even look completely different. Now, what we're going to do now is move on to a pre-made shape and editing some of the points. So this is a shape I actually got from Silhouette, and I'm just going to edit some of the points to completely change the look of it. So as you can see here, there's like a little tiny divot already out of this shape. It's not a complete circle. It's kind of a bit of a wonky kind of circle. And as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm just touching along the lines of the shape, and I'm clicking and dragging on the points. If you happen to click on an area where there is no point and just in between on the line, you'll actually add a point to that section. So I'm just going to zoom out a little here. Here's my design, and I'm just going to click here in the middle, and you can see that I've just created a point right along those middle of the line there. If I grab one of those points with my mouse and just click and drag it, I'm able to drag it in and out and up and down however I'd like. All along, you can move it all the way out, you can leave it all the way in, however you'd like to edit and change any design that you have, even the design here in our files. So that's how that sun type shape was created. And the last thing I want to show you is how to use your pencil tool. So if you click on the pencil tool and then go to the line style window, I'm going to make this into a thicker line. So I'm going to choose a 10-point line for this purpose, and I'll just zoom in. And you simply want to click and drag and draw your pencil all the way around. I'm going to just do a loopy-loop type thing here and link it back together. And if you double click on that shape, you'll see that all the points show up. So all the points built into that design show up, and you're able to just click on them and drag them and move them around however you'd like to alter the shape of your design. So you can see there that there's some additional handles that pop up, and if you were to click and drag on some of those handles, it would change the curve and the arc of that line. So you could really get pretty creative if you're good at drawing. This would be a really, really good thing to do. And you can see that I did this basic, that's how I drew this squiggly circle here for the design. So now let's go ahead and just take a look at how you can apply some of these principles to the page map sketch. So this is one of the sketches I used for this week's lesson, and as you can see, that's how we created this background circle file, was based on this sketch here. So I have just simply cut that circle background out onto some pattern paper by Fancy Pants, and I've used the same cut file to back with the backing with different patterns of paper, and you can use circle punches, or you could just draw a simple circle in your silhouette and line the back of that. And you can see there that that's that fun word that we use by tracing that PNG file, and it's a really great way to customize your page. Now for this sketch here, I use this as the sun shape as my circle. And this is where we edited the points to make the sun an individual kind of unique shape. And it's really easy to use that shape and then layer on that pencil drawn squiggly line to make the sun pattern on our page. And the title here, Life, was actually another PNG file that was traced and used for the title of my page. And you can see here how I've just stitched down some of the layered shapes from the sun shape from the sketch. So that is it for us for week 2. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and thanks again for stopping by. Make sure you come back for week 3. We have lots of great stuff in store, and of course check us out at Page Maps for lots of great sketches and inspiration.